Chancellor Angela Merkel has reached a deal, it seems, with Interior Minister Horst Seehofer, ending a bitter dispute that threatened her coalition government. After hours of crisis talks, the two leaders said they had reached an agreement on Germany's migration policy. Let's get out to Willem, who is in Berlin with the details here. And Willem, I think the key question is, to what extent did Seehofer actually get what he wanted in this deal, or was this a way of him saving his own political neck?
I think, as is often the case, Jeff, that's a question for him to answer, essentially. But in terms of what he talked about leading into these previous couple of weeks, in terms of his proposals about border controls, there does seem to be some areas in which he's got what he proposed, specifically that there will be processing centres at the border that will screen people arriving into Germany to decide whether they are those who've already applied for asylum elsewhere in Europe. Now, you remember, of course, coming out of these summits over the last couple of weeks in Brussels, Angela Merkel seemed relatively happy with the compromises reached there in terms of her language, specifically in terms of the ability for Germany to send people back to countries where these applications have been originally registered. The difference now, because of this compromise, is that they will be screening these people at the borders, at centres at the borders, which allows Horst Seehofer, as head of the CSU, to go back to voters in Bavaria and say, look, we are doing what we promised we would do. We are controlling Germany's borders. What that means for the concept of freedom of movement in Europe remains to be seen. There are long-term implications for that from these measures. The Austrians themselves may not be thrilled with this prospect as well, because, of course, this will be something happening on their border with Germany as well. Angela Merkel, though, came back from Brussels, tries to shoehorn this into the deals that she made with her European partners. Here was her response to the deal that was struck last night.
That's how we keep the spirit of partnership within the European Union, and at the same time we navigate and organise secondary migration. This is and was very important for me, and I think we reached a good compromise today after days of difficult negotiations.
And Jeff, to your question as to whether Horst Seehofer is able to say, I got what I wanted, this is not just a face-saving exercise. His comments last night after this deal were very, very illustrative. Take a listen.
Ich bin froh, dass diese Einigung gelungen ist.
I am happy that we reached an agreement. It shows that it is worth fighting for a conviction. Our agreement is a sustainable agreement that will last into the future. This clear agreement matches my convictions and allows me to continue to lead the Interior Ministry.
That word conviction, a really key one there. He's claiming, of course, to voters that this was something he passionately cared about, controlling Germany's borders. Reality, of course, this is to do with staving off threats from the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, in Bavaria ahead of local elections there in October. That's what all the political analysts we've talked to about have said is what's really going on here. In terms of Merkel's future, this will leave relations between the CSU and the CDU pretty uncomfortable. They're likely to be meeting today as a whole to try and decide on their next steps as a partnership in this coalition government.
Willem, so let me just take you to where we now stand, because it feels as though everybody's putting good spin on the relationship between the CSU and the CDU. If you take a look at the comments from the likes of Bavaria's CSU Premier Markus Söder, said they were ready for compromises, and for us now there is no exit from the government. Do you think investors can fully park their fears to one side that these two allies in government will actually at some point turn away from each other? Is that worst fear now behind us?
69 years of partnership, Karen. Very difficult to see what the benefits are for the CSU as the minority member of that partnership from leaving government. Essentially, they have a seat at the table right now, and by leaving that partnership behind, they would no longer have that same kind of leverage. The question is, Markus Söder, the man behind Seehofer, in a sense, he took Seehofer's job down in Bavaria, potentially looking to take his job as party chief nationally as well. He wants to stay in power in Bavaria, and if that meant setting up these border controls, if that meant taking votes away from the AfD, which now has a sizable portion of the Bundestag behind me, that was something he was prepared to do, whatever it meant for that partnership.
Willem, thank you very much. And you've got some guests coming up this morning to talk about the situation on the ground. Otto Ficker will be joining you, so we're looking forward to that conversation with the budgetary spokesperson for the FDP. Hey.
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.